All right, high rollers, we haven't spoken to this guy in quite a while, but I always love having him on. One of the best poker players around, right around the $4 million mark in lifetime cashes. That number is likely much higher. He's a winner on the WSOP circuit. He's got 7 final tables at the World Series of Poker, including 2 second-place finishes, a runner-up in the World Championship of 7-card stud 8 or better, had another second a year later, 2011, in Pot Limit Hold'em. He's also final tabled the very prestigious 50K Poker Players Championship. And in 2013, he was named the Heartland Poker Tour's Player of the Year. Alan Kessler, our guest today, the Chainsaw. Welcome to the show, man. Thanks for being back.
All right. Actually, since then, I've had 2 more close calls for bracelets. I've actually had 4 of those.
4 seconds?
Yeah, I'm the only person with 4 seconds and no bracelet.
Oh, my God. So Alan, you gotta get over the line here sooner or later. Do you think you're going to do it?
Yeah, I mean, they've fixed the structures again this year. There was too much play early and not enough play late, so they're making a lot of the tournaments 40-minute levels in the beginning. And then when it's deeper later on, they make it 1 hour or even longer. So it's going to benefit me, I think.
Yeah, and why is that? Simply because when it's late in a tournament, there's more on the line, and that's when the skill shines through?
Yeah, that's when you want to have the most blinds. You don't want to have 100 or 200 blinds at 100, because everybody, you're not going to go broke. But when you're in like day 3, you don't want the average stack to be like 15 big blinds or so. So they're trying to adjust to make it deeper later, which I think is a good thing.
Now, you're a big part of this, the structure realignments, making changes, tinkering here and there to make everything better for not only the organizers, but the players as well. I was going to talk about this later, but you recently tweeted out to tournament directors considering running events with bonuses for double bagging and multiple flights. This is something that you see as awful. You've spotted it, and you want it changed, right? Stop the madness, you said.
Yeah, it's a madness thing, because the problem is with that format, once you've bagged once, you have supreme power in the tournament because you can't lose. You've already bagged, and if you bag even one more chip on the second time, you're going to get $2,500 more. So basically, at the end of the night, when you have the other bag to fall back on, you have a lot of options to do with your chips. You can start just going all in crazily, trying to get a bigger stack, which people say that's fine, but it's not really in the general nature of a tournament to do that. Or the main issue I have is you can decide, well, my friend is not even qualified yet. I can give him like 80% of my stack right now, and I can still make the $2,500 bagging bonus and move on to day 2 with my first bag. So you have no risk of dumping almost all your chips to somebody else that hasn't bagged yet. So any situation where they're incentivizing dumping chips to other people should not be done. I mean, people are saying, well, if you don't like it, don't play. But that's not the point. Why offer people a format where you're incentivizing dumping chips to somebody? Once you bag, you're going to get $2,500 if you bag one more chip or if you bag 200,000 more chips. So of course you're going to try and figure out, what am I going to do with all these extra chips? I don't need them. So people are saying, well, what are the odds that you'd know somebody at the end? And what it comes down to is, in local markets, when you get down to the end of a tournament, you're going to know about half the people in the tournament. I've seen this a lot. I play a lot of tournaments, and when you get to the end of the tournament, where it's all locals, about half the people know the other half in the tournament. So you're going to have a situation where you know somebody at your table at the end of the round that hasn't qualified yet. You have plenty of chips. You're going to get an extra $2,500 regardless. So why not make a deal with that person and dump them almost all your chips and leave enough so you get the $2,500 bonus? It's a really bad format if you think about it.
You're talking about collusion here, and I'm wondering, it's always been around in poker. How big a problem is it these days? And I can see the situation where you got 2 friends at the table, and on break, the one guy saying to the other, hey, come on, give me some chips, man, keep me in this thing.
Yeah, because, well, the thing is, in that extreme situation where you're doing the double bagging bonus, the guy that's dumping the chips has no risk. If he's got a reasonable stack, he's going to get $2,500 extra anyway, no matter how many chips he has. So he's got a huge incentive to dump to somebody else and say, look, I'll dump you a lot of chips. Just give me half of whatever you cash for tomorrow. I mean, I don't know if this goes on or not, but why would you incentivize even the thought of having somebody do this? So that whole format, I think, should be abolished. Like paying people to bag a second and third time, I think is ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree with you. It just doesn't make sense. It tends to lead to collusion. Another issue that I wonder about is players backing other players playing in the same tournament. They all have a piece of each other. They're swapping out. That can be a problem, can it?
Basically, that's a big problem in the high roller circuit these days. And they've been fighting for a policy where you have to sign like some kind of a form that says who in the tournament you have an agreement with or a swap with. Because a lot of these players are all in the same money, and they're basically going against 2 or 3 people at the table. They want to have a more open environment in those high rollers. But I think in general, in the type of events I play, like the $1,000 to $3,500 areas, I don't think it really impacts that much because most people are not swapping more than like a few percentage points with anybody else. And if somebody's like completely backed by somebody, those people know that they're being backed by whoever. Like, for example, Ralph Massey is backed by his brother, Aaron. So, I mean, the times that they play together at the same table, people know that they're brothers anyway. So, I'm not sure how they play against each other, but that's just an example. But in general, I don't think there's much to worry about that, except for in the high rollers, because in the high rollers, you might have 5% swaps with like half the, 5 or 6 different people in the tournament. So you're swapping out like 30 or 40% of yourself, and people should know that.
I want to ask you about these staking sites. Some people feel that the players are selling off their action at too high of a markup. They're asking too much. I think it's great. It's a free market society. Ask what you want. If you get it, that should be fine. The issue that I have and what I'm wondering about is these fans that are investing money in the players. How do they know that the players are actually playing those events that they're posting about?
Okay, well, there's basically a few reputable sites like that. Like I deal with Stake Kings. It's also UStake is another reputable one. And basically, you have to provide them with a copy of your receipt. Like I'm very well known, so my hands get reported when I bust. Stake Kings has a very rigid requirement on who they'll accept. They only accept very well-known players. It's very well known if I play an event or if I bust or how many chips I have because most of the events that I sell for are reported. They're going to see if I bust, they're going to see the bust down hand. I usually will take a picture if I bust, so people people that have invested know how I busted or what happened during the hand. I would say there's very low chance of any shenanigans going on with those 2 particular sites. I'm not familiar with some of the other sites. Like there's one called Tasty Stakes and a few other ones where I can't speak on those. I can only speak for the 2 major ones, UStake and Stake Kings. Those are both, as far as I know, very legitimate websites.
I know you're one of these guys that puts a lot of study in it. You analyze these structures. You recently tweeted out about Jack Yeffel and the WSOP approving a new chip increase for some circuit events. The first one at the Rio. You say it's going to be a big hit. Why is that?
Okay, well, here was the thing. They had a format where it was $400 for 15,000 and $600 gets you 20,000. We were at Harris, and we were talking about having a $600 horse tournament. And I said, well, how are you going to advertise a $600 horse tournament where people that are playing the $400 version are getting an extra 5,000 chips and paying 50% more? It doesn't seem like it's a reasonable deal. And they say, well, how about if we offer 30,000? And then they say, well, how about if we just make it double the chips of the 400? I said, if you do that and it's a reasonably good structure, I think that would be a big hit. So what they did was, they agreed to go to the 40,000, and they're starting you with 100 big bets, which is very, very nice in a limit tournament. So it's 40,000 chips, and they're starting at 200, 400, and they're gradually increasing the limits as you go, and it's going to be great. It's going to be a 2-day event, and I think it's going to be very successful. And I've already talked with Mo at the bike. He has a 610 game mix, and he's probably going to use the same structure that the Rio is using for his, because his was originally also 20,000. But with 20,000 in a 10-game mix is basically a crapshoot because, you're playing Pot Limit Omaha and No Limit and Deuce of 7 Triple Draw, and these games are very chip intensive. So you need a lot more chips in some of those games. So I think, deeper stacks with very good structure, it's going to be a big hit, and they're going to wind up fixing the structures for next year on the circuit where the buy-in is more related to how many chips you get and the levels, because the $600 tournaments have had no people, and they say, why aren't we getting people in these events? And the reason is because they have like the $400 event where you'd have a monster stack or a double stack where you're getting 30,000 chips with really good levels, and then the very next day they're having a $600 event with 20,000 chips and almost the identical levels. So why would somebody want to pay 50% more for less play and less chips? It just didn't seem like it made sense, and they've addressed it, and I really applaud them for that.
I've played my fair share of poker tournaments, and it always comes up, it's always complaints, too, about the structure. And I'm wondering, why do you feel it necessary, you yourself, because not a lot of players do this. I mean, you really delve into the various structures, not just at one tournament, but all the tournaments. When did that start for you, and why did you start doing that?
I just, because, I'm playing out mostly it's all my own money that I'm investing, and I would look over stuff and I would say, this is a really good tournament, or this is a really bad tournament. And in like 2007, Gavin Smith gave me the name Chainsaw, and then that evolved into Chainsaw Approved. And if I approve of a structure and I put the hashtag Chainsaw Approved, it's like a gold label. Like somebody sees that, they say they know it's going to be good. But a lot of these tournament directors, they say, well, you know what, we'll skip 250, 500, nobody will notice. Or we'll skip 2,500, 5,000 on day 2, nobody will notice. But I do notice. And like when you skip those levels, it affects things a lot. Because like usually at 2,500, 5,000, you're right near the money. And why would you want to skip a level at such an important phase? Or at the beginning of the tournament, why would you want to go from 200, 400 to 300, 600 when you only have like, say, 15,000 chips and you're playing 30 or 40-minute levels? Why would you skip levels, when people are not that deep at that point? So anyway, things like that, I notice it. If the structures are correct, and I say it's Chainsaw Approved, people flock to it. The MSPT for years had the thing on their thing, Chainsaw Approved, and their attendance went up like 300%. Now they're like the number one. They've since gone to Big Blind Ante, but when they were using my Chainsaw Approved thing, their attendance went up like 300%. They went from being a also-ran to the number one mid-major circuit. So it's just something that I've always done, and I've gotten a reputation for it. I've actually had like tournament directors, they'll email me their structure, and they'll say, is there anything you don't like or you like, or can you give us the Chainsaw Approved stamp on this or what? So people actually, people think that I'm like nitpicky over this stuff, but a lot of the tournament directors actually ask me about this stuff, believe it or not.
Well, I think it's a great thing you do, because you do make a great point. You play so long and work so hard, and then all of a sudden a level goes missing. You're right at the money. Your edge is taken away, and it becomes a crapshoot. And sometimes you lose that flip, and those 3 days go wasted, and it's got to be frustrating in those moments.
If you Google my name and Jack Ethel, you'll see in I think it was 2014, there were some issues with the limit structures, and there's a Poker News article. It says, Jack Ethel and Alan Kessler revised the limit structures mid-World Series. It's like never ever done in history, where they'll change, usually the structures are set in stone once you get to the World Series. And they changed, they went with exactly what I had suggested, mid-World Series, which is unprecedented. So people actually do care about this stuff. If you bring it up to them, you have to be civil about it. You can't just say, well, this tournament sucks. You have to explain to them what's wrong and how to fix it, and things like that. So I think this horse thing that they're doing at the Rio, it's an experiment. I think it's going to be great. I think they're going to get a lot more people than they got in a similar 400 horse last month at Paris, but we'll see. So I have a good feeling about it, though.
Well, it's almost midnight where I am. You just checked into your hotel. You're on the road a lot. I mean, another long day of gambling and poker for you today. I know you recently cashed in Florida, 11th place in Omaha. There's another game you like. You're keeping busy.
I was late in the night on that one, and then I wanted to play the Monster Stack, because they got almost 1,500 people on that. But I went so deep in this PLO tournament, and then got one outed on the river in 11th, that I couldn't enter that. And the only thing left was a $2,000 no limit, and the field looked really strong. So somebody texted me that there was a 75-150 cash game mix going on. So it took me a while to find where the poker room was, but the poker room was beautiful here in Tampa. And I sat down, and it really wasn't 75-150 mix. It was 75-150 pot limit mix. So basically, two people would ante, the blinds would be like 25-25 or whatever, and then someone would open to 100. You might call, and then there's a cap. At some point, you can only put in 1,500, only 1,500, quote unquote, per hand. Basically, you could lose. So it was a much bigger game than I expected. It took me a while to get acclimated to the rules, but I have a streak going in cash games, and I haven't lost since I can't remember, at least 4 or 5 years in cash games. And I got stuck about 1,800, and then I just grinded it back, and I wound up winning a small amount. And it was getting late, and I had to check out of the room this morning. So I took the small win, and I quit the game. And it was a very good game, by the way.
You know, it's very interesting because I think it happens to a lot of novice players too. You know, they want to play 1-3 or something. They end up in a 5-5 game. At what point would you, when you realize the game's playing bigger than advertised, would you say, hey, I feel comfortable here, I'm going to stay, or no, it's too big for me, I'm leaving?
No, it was a lot bigger than I thought, but I knew a couple of the players. I knew Robbie Mizrachi, who's a world-class player, John Raciner, another world-class player. But there were some players that made mistakes. And once I see players making mistakes, like I saw one player going to 7th Street with 2 middle pair against open aces and against a low flushing board in 7-stud 8 or better. So once I see mistakes like that, it's very hard for me to leave a game because I know I have an edge. And I'll give you one hand history, even though it's boring, but we're playing Big O where you get 5 cards in your hand. And I raised with ace 3, 10, king, king with a suited ace, which is a pretty good hand. You want to have ace deuce or ace deuce 3 with high cards or pairs or whatever. Anyway, I have a reasonably good hand, ace 3, 10, king, king with a suited ace, and I got a few callers, and I flopped the wheel. It came 2, 4, 5. So a wheel is not that difficult to flop when you have 5 cards in your hand, correct?
Right.
So I had opened to 100, so there's 400 in the pot, and I check, because I don't want to get trapped by somebody that has ace 3, 6 or somebody that has ace 3 with a flush draw.
You've got the straight, but you could be crushed.
Right, but I also have the nut low, which is ace 3. It's a very good hand. So anyway, I check. It checks around. The turn card is a blank. So now I bet the pot, 400. And it goes fold, and then another player makes it the whole 1,500. So I have to call 1,500. I'm guaranteed the low, and I also have a wheel. So I'm just hoping he doesn't have ace 3, 6 or ace 3 with a flush draw or whatever. Anyway, he has ace 4, 6, which is nothing. He had the blocker to a flush, but he basically had nothing. So I'm scooping this pot of over like $3,500 with the wheel. So this is a great thing. Like who would make it 1,500 with ace 4, 6 on a 2-3-5 board because you don't have anything, right? If you've played a lot of Big O, you know on 6, 4, 5 somebody has to have ace 3. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, so in that situation, the game might be bigger than you expected, but you're saying, hey, this is a game I should play in.
Yeah, because, I mean, the guy's potting it for $1,500 with ace 4, 6. So it winds up, the river is the worst card possible. It's a 3. So now he has the same low as I do, and he has a 6 high straight. So he winds up winning 3/4 on this ridiculous bluff. And I only get a quarter of my money back. So that was how I got stuck. But I'm thinking to myself, this is crazy because I'm supposed to win like 3,500 on this hand, and I'm not leaving this game because this game is phenomenal. Like, how could anybody in their right mind put in $1,500 with ace 4, 6 on 2-3-5?
Yeah, it makes you wonder sometimes. Some guys just like the action, right? Now, listen, the World Series is quickly approaching. I know you think about it year-round, especially with the structures and all that stuff. But in terms of playing, when do you start prepping for it? Do you do something different in terms of preparation, or are you doing that right now in Florida by simply playing?
No, see, I basically go week to week, and I pick out where I'm going to go each week. 52 weeks a year.
Wow.
So, like this week, I'm at Tampa. Next week, I'm at the Rio. The next week after that, I'm going to be in Hammond or at the LAPC, etc. But each weekend, I have a place that I go to. It's going to be a place that I like. So it has to be a place that has good tournaments, that has slot machines that I like, that has a hotel. Like I don't go to any place like a dog track, like Palm Kennel Club or Daytona Kennel. Like I don't care what the event is. I just won't go. It's got to be somewhere where I'm comfortable. Like I have other stuff to do. Like I'm not just going to go somewhere where all they have is poker. So they got to have a hotel. They have to have slots. They have to have a schedule that I like, structure that I like. So basically 52 weeks a year. So when the World Series comes around, I live in Las Vegas. So it's just a different routine. I play every single day at the World Series. There's something I'll play. So for like 67 or 68 straight days, I'm at the World Series. Some days I get there at 11. Some days I get there at 3 o'clock. But basically I play every single day. I don't play anywhere else during the summer but the Rio.
Now, have you noticed poker changing with respect to the so-called young guns, hitting the gym, eating right, yoga even? Like, I mean, I don't suppose you're doing any of that, are you?
No. But, I've noticed a lot of the younger players are starting to learn the mixed games, which is troubling because they study, and once they figure out the mixed games, it makes it much harder. But people make so many mistakes right now in the mixed games. That's where my edge has always been. So I'm hoping they don't really study these mixed games much. A lot of them just only play no limit. They won't play anything else. But the one thing I've noticed about a lot of the younger players is as soon as that break hits at the World Series, they have to go to their car and smoke weed or smoke vape or whatever they're doing. And if somebody wants to Google it, Google my name, weed and poker. It's like a 10-year-old video at this point, but that basically summarizes my point of this. Like if you're playing for millions of dollars at the World Series, your first priority should not be how fast can I smoke weed or vape or whatever on the break. That shouldn't be remotely your first priority.
You're a big opponent of marijuana. I was going to ask you that as well because I know it's legal in Nevada now. Have you noticed any change with respect to players partaking? You make a good point. There's so much money, and in some players' cases, legacy on the line, and they're just rushing out there to get high.
Yeah, but this just happened in Tampa. The guy came back. He was chip leader in the Omaha tournament that I finished 11th, and he could barely read the card. He had taken some kind of mushroom thing or something. He didn't even know what he took on the break, and he was barely coherent. And like they called the floor over, and they didn't know what to do. Like the guy is like, "How much is it? How much do I have to?" Like he didn't know. He couldn't figure out the bets, and then every so often he would figure out what he had, but sometimes he didn't know what he had, and he actually won more chips because of it because everybody was wondering if he could read the board or not. But I mean, the guy had all the chips in the tournament and then didn't even bag because he just lost it at some point. It was ridiculous. I felt really bad for the guy, and I saw him like yesterday and today, and I said, are you feeling okay now? Because like he didn't even know what he took or anything. He had never tried this stuff before. It was a really bad situation, actually. I was going to he had asked me, like, do I have enough chips to take off the last 2 hours? And I said, yes, it's PLO. You don't have to put any money in the pot. It's very small blind. You're just paying like 1 in 2,000 each. He had hundreds of thousands. He lost all of it before day 2 started because he was totally incoherent. Like it was mind boggling that, we're playing for 50,000 for first place and it's like a $200,000 prize pool, Omaha PLO tournament. And the guy on the break, somebody convinced him to try these mushroom things or whatever. I don't even know what it's called, but he was completely incoherent for the last 4 hours of the tournament.
That's unbelievable.
A lot of times you'll smell the marijuana on people when they come back and they still play reasonably well. But this guy was, I don't care how well you play. I think, if you have, something in your system, I don't think you're playing 100%. So.
You mentioned something earlier. You mentioned the slots. I know you like video poker. Can you give us some advice how you approach the game, things to do, maybe some simple advice?
As far as video poker goes, you basically want to find a game that's closest to 100%. There's no game that you're going to play that you have an edge at in video poker. So, like some people will just walk up to a machine and they'll play it and they don't even care what the payouts are in video poker, but that's kind of ridiculously bad. So basically you want to know what the full pay version of any game is that you're playing. Like if you're playing jacks or better, there's a certain pay table that is the best. If you're playing double bonus, there's a certain pay table that's the best, etc. Deuces wild. You should know what the pay table is. That's the first thing. And this information is readily available all over the internet. It'll tell you based on whatever the payouts are for like flush, full house, all the different hands. There's an exact payout for every version of video poker. So you should know if I'm going to play like jacks are better, this is the payouts I want to have, or I'm not going to play. Or if I'm going to play double bonus. So that's the first thing. Second thing is you want to know how to play the hands correctly. And that's also pretty readily available on the internet. There's like different programs where you can practice. And if you're just playing like on gut instinct on video poker, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And the payout is based on playing perfectly. So imagine if you're playing a bad game and then you're not playing perfectly, you're going to just get killed. This guy, Kyle Cartwright, he posts on Twitter that he won $100,000 playing $25 video poker. And I said to him, that game, that's a horrible game. You just got really lucky. And he said, well, don't tell me what's a good and bad game because you're a horrible poker player or something like that. And I said to him, yeah, but like I'm playing against random people. You're playing a machine that is like a 2% dog on every single hand. You're betting $125 as a 2% dog. So basically, every hand you're giving up like $2.50, which doesn't seem like much. But if you play, say, 800 hands an hour at $2.50, now you're losing hundreds of dollars per hour playing the game. That's if you play the game perfectly.
Right.
And you're never ever winning. You're saying I'm going to lose this X amount. I mean, you might win 100,000 this time, but over your lifetime, if you play that game with 98% return, you're going to lose 2% every single hand that you play, no matter if you got lucky or hit $100,000 like this guy did or whatever. So you have to know the pay tables, you have to know the strategy, and I doubt most people do either one. Most people just walk up to the bar and they'll be getting a drink and they'll start playing video poker without even looking at the pay table or knowing what hands to hold. Like,
well, the one thing I admire about you, and you mentioned it, that you travel so much, 52 weeks a year. I take it some of these places you go to because, as you mentioned, you like them, you feel comfortable there. You're pretty in tune with the casino bonuses, the special promotions, all the deals, and this goes all part of it, right, as being a professional player.
Yeah, I mean, like I just came from Potawatomi. Like I had some offers in my mailbox for free rooms, and I had $200 free play a couple of the days. And, I like to gamble there anyway. So I wound up staying there for 11 days, and everything, by the time I was done, everything was comped. All my meals were paid for. I got free access to the lounge to eat dinner every day. It was very relaxing. And if I busted a tournament, I had other things to do. I could go play slots. I could go play video poker. I could go to the lounge and eat. I could go to a restaurant. I could go to my room and relax and watch television. So it's like a vacation almost, but I'm there, and I wound up cashing in the main event. I cashed in another event. So that's the kind of place I look for. You have to go places where you're treated like that, which is nice. Like Black Hawk, Colorado, I like going there because there's a whole strip of like 20 casinos. So when I go there, I might have offers at like 5 or 6 different casinos on that strip. And I can just walk from one place to the next. And I don't even know what I have. I'll just put my card in and see what offer I have at each place. It's like a, fun thing for me because it's like a mystery.
It's smart, too, and I think more players should take advantage of some of these offers. I mean, 11 days at a casino playing your profession, something you love, and it's all comped. I mean, that's amazing. That's got to be done more often. With respect to the WSOP schedule this summer, I'm sure you like it. One thing I noticed, there seems to be more and more Omaha games popping up each year. There's a lot of them this year.
Yeah, they have a lot of different buy-ins for PLO, but I think they dropped the ball where they should have had, like they added some $600 PLO. They should have added something similar to what they're doing at the Rio, like a $600 horse or a $600 Omaha 8, because those people are not represented. Like they have to go to like Venetian or Planet Hollywood or the Golden Nugget if they want to play a lower buy-in mixed event. There's no such thing at the Rio. I think that's a big. I'm going to talk to Jack. I'm going to be at the Rio next week for the circuit event. I'm going to talk to Jack and try and convince him to do it, but it's probably too late at this point. But they do have quite a few. They call it it's not the Happy Meal, dollar menu or something, where they have several events at $1,000 or below this year that were added, and a lot of them are freeze-outs, which is very good for poker, where you can't just buy a stack and keep this going all in and going all in. That was getting a lot of the players frustrated because they have like a high roller like Daniel Negreanu or Sean Deeb or somebody put down their stack and just go all in because they don't care. They'll just buy another 1,000, another 1,000, another 1,000, and try and build up a stack. But they have a lot of these lower buy-in freeze-outs this year, which is very good for poker because now the recreational player is on the same page with Sean Deeb or Dan Negreanu or anybody else. They're only getting one shot at this tournament. So the World Series made a lot of good changes for this year. They fixed some of the structures. They're giving, more chips and more play. There are a lot more freeze outs, a lot more lower buy-ins for the recreational type players. I think they're going to get a lot of players that were at Venetian or Wynn or Planet Hollywood to come back to the Rio this year.
Yeah, I like it. And lastly, Alan, I got to ask you, because another thing I admire about you is you seem to be an adjudicator in the poker world. People come to you to settle disputes. I know when they do last longer bets, you're the one taking names and collecting money, and that's because people trust you.
Yeah, I do a lot of those during the World Series. In the 10,000 mixed events, it's 1,000 per player, and I keep all the records, and usually they're between $35,000 to $50,000 that I'm trusted with. And those events take 3 or 4 days. So basically, I'm holding $35,000 to $50,000 of the players' money for 4 days, which, you have to be really trusted to do something like that. Plus, I have to keep the records of who's in, and I also post a list on Facebook and Twitter. So, there's no discrepancy like they're saying, well, you collected money from so-and-so, but you didn't put it in the pool. But I show the exact list of players and with a number next to each player. So there'll be 40 names and 40,000 in the prize pool for it. So people really trust me to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge compliment for you. I saw your Twitter, and I also saw this making the rounds. And the reason I'm talking about this is because a former guest, Mike McDonald, Timex, has been playing adjudicator to this 10K or a dime bet. And I'm wondering if you can parlay some wisdom. When you're making a bet with people, make sure the terms are very clear, correct?
Yes, like this is the one I was called for recently. 2 players did it last longer for $500 in an event, which seems reasonable, right?
Right.
So the winner gets $500. So what happened was one player busted, the other player played all the way through. The player that busted rebought and wound up finishing longer than the second player who didn't rebuy. So the first player said, well, he busted on the first bullet, so I automatically won the last longer. And the second player said, no, the last longer was for all bullets. So my question was, well, did you agree up front that the last longer was for all bullets? And they look at me like they really didn't discuss that. But one guy said, well, I assumed it was for all bullets. The other guy said, well, I assumed it was just for the first bullet. So those kind of things, when you make a bet like that, like a last longer bet or some kind of a conditional bet, you have to really think about the conditions of the bet and what could happen in advance. Because once the thing is over with, both people have a right to say, well, I won the bet. Like one guy said, well, I outlasted you on the tournament. You rebought. Rebuying means that you lost the bet. The other guy says, no, it was for all bullets, and I rebought and I outlasted you. So, each person has a valid argument. So, and that thing from Mike McDonald, it to me it looked like he's saying, well, you have 10,000 bet on the heads or tails. Give me one dime on whatever, meaning 1,000 of that 10,000, because he didn't want him to lose his whole 10,000 back. That's the way I read it. But other people are saying no. He's saying, I'll do the same dime meaning 10,000. So you could read it 2 ways. You could read it, well, I'll take the same 10,000 on heads, or you could mean, well, since you already have 10,000, I'll just take a dime, meaning 1,000. So it could actually be inferred both ways.
It's very, very interesting stuff. Alan, I really appreciate your time, man. Continued success in Florida, and very good luck this summer at the World Series. I hope you get your first bracelet, man. I really do.
Yeah, I'm glad to talk to you anytime. If anybody wants to invest in me, I usually have some stuff on StakeKings.com, and you just click on the tab, and I'm usually the first player because my name starts with A. So